Good afternoon. I hereby call this special meeting of the Nacogdoches ISD Board of Trustees to order. Let a record show that a quorum is present and that notice of this meeting was legally posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. Reverend Irvin is currently away and unable to attend our meeting. We thank you for joining us today. Please remember that items do not have to be taken in the order shown on the agenda, and please join us in turning your cell phones to the silent mode. First item on today's agenda is public comment. We did not receive any request to speak today. If you wish to make public comment at a future meeting, please refer to the instructions in the meeting notice. That's going to take us to our first item is a budget workshop, and I will turn it over to Mrs. Barbrick.
If you'll give me just a moment, I'm still trying to download. Good afternoon, President Fitch, board members, Dr. Trujillo. Sorry. This is the beginning of our, it's the beginning in presenting to you of our budget, and a lot of work has been going on already, but this is our first presentation with you, and this is just a very broad overview of what has happened so far. No decisions have been made regarding compensation or, but projections have been made. So I believe this begins on page 5, our agenda. And the first thing I wanted to show you is our historical enrollment. That is on page 6. So as you can see, from 1819, we were our enrollment was 6,249. This year, our enrollment is 5,822. And rolling those numbers up for next year, on the next page, we are projecting an enrollment of 5,862. Now, unfortunately, what that is an increase, but based on what we have, our attendance rate has been the last several years, we are projecting an ADA of 5,076.467, and that is basically an 86% rate of attendance, which is very bad. If we can get it up to 92%, as in past years pre-COVID, that would bring our ADA up to 5,275. And again, at 94%, 5,510. But for budget purposes, I am going to be going with the 5,076. And then for staffing purposes, we go with the 5,862 enrollment.
I'm not sure who this question should go to, but how can we look at increasing the attendance rate? Has that been considered, or has there been discussions regarding that?
Well, we have had conversations with the commissioner. There are, for instance, the first semester, because of COVID and some of the things that occurred, there is an adjustment that has been made to address that. Not knowing what the future will bring with regards to, we're navigating a whole new direction with regards to what the implications of COVID is. And with that comes the confidence of our families. And so what we continue to do is to communicate, reassure, and validate and provide those opportunities for our families to know that school is a great place to be. That's the safest place that we can be. And even with natural disasters, not that we dealt with tornadoes or those kinds of things, but even in that example, we are very well prepared to keep the kids safe. So a lot of times it's keeping the kids in school and enrolling and making sure their enrollments stay there. The number you're seeing is a very conservative number. We want to make sure that we operate on a conservative number, and I appreciate Lisa doing that so that all we have is the opportunities to have a greater ADA when it comes to our students.
Okay.
So although it's alarming when you see it, it's best to be very prudent in our planning so that we can adjust accordingly and not be overcompensating with that. Lisa, you might have some other
Well,
insight.
for instance, there was an ADA adjustment this year, but we didn't find that out until after Christmas. So you can't plan for something you don't know about. We are seeing a rise in our attendance rate, definitely since COVID started, so that is good news, and we, as he said, as our family's confidence in this pandemic gets behind us, we should see our attendance rate get back to what it used to be.
And Dr. Trio, this is not something that only Nacogdoches is experiencing, correct? This is a statewide trend.
Yeah, it's a statewide. Matter of fact, I believe, was it last week, folks, that the commissioner had the conference call? Michael, was that? When Lisa was talking about giving us the numbers, the state is also being very cautious. They could have easily come back before the holidays and said, these are the numbers, but they're really collecting a lot of data across the board. And to make this adjustment statewide, it's because there is a statewide issue when it comes to enrollment and the dip that's happening, not just in enrollment, but also in ADA coming to school. And enrollment has implications because of the fact that there's now this opportunity for virtual platforms to really start pulling and ramping themselves up. What I'm anticipating, and this is typically the way it happens, is a family may make that choice early on, and then all of a sudden they're thinking, whoa, this is not what I thought, and so we wind up gaining the students. That has some serious implications with regards to what Dr. Hill and her department is working with, because these kids come with an academic slide. They may be months and even further behind, and now that puts pressure on our teachers because we want to get the kids caught up. So it's multi-dimensional when you're looking at it, but absolutely it's not just in Nacogdoches. Matter of fact, you'll see our neighboring school districts. We have a school district that enrollment had become such a catastrophe for them that decisions of operations have to be made. Austin ISD, example, watching them and working closely with what they're doing, enrollment and drop in enrollment, even though you're in a metropolitan area, has implications with staffings and all the things that are going on. But just for the public to know, we are being very, very responsible and very, very conservative with what we have. And luckily, we haven't been running an above staff model that we have. And that goes with Ms. Barber and her leadership with running a conservative numbers for us. So, yes, ma'am.
Dr. Torrelio, I went through those numbers. I noticed that 11th grade, absolutely no improvement as far as number-wise. However, 10th grade was 94 students would be added. It's my surprise nobody take advantage of the programs that we have and sign up as juniors and move on. Also, I noticed in 9th grade we have 34 students minus, 6th grade 52 minus. However, gains are at 2nd grade by 13, 4th grade by 15, 7th grade by 30, like I said, 10th grade by 94, and 12th grade by 50. What's become so fluctuating?
So the roll numbers are just taking, so for instance, first grade. we had currently have 422 students.
Right.
So in second grade, you're going to see 422 students. All it is rolling up to the next grade level.
The granular numbers that you see, and this is pre-COVID. Every time we roll our kids up, the soft numbers we have are what's actually in our enrollment currently. So when we staff it, if you have that number as first graders, what do we need to run it as second graders? We just roll that number up. Now, if you remember the demographer when he came in and started talking, and we're talking about attendance zones and capacities.
Yes.
He also talked about that you have this bank of enrollments that kind of wave. So you prepare and you staff based on a wave of students
Right.
that are coming up. So it's not unusual to see a wave of kids coming through.
Yes.
I'm anticipating, COVID had a lot of folks locked behind their doors.
Right.
So is there a possibility that in a few years, when they start school, we're going to see an enrollment bubble? Probably. The same thing when you see the baby boomers.
Right.
It's just something depending on what's happening out there in the community and in the with regards to the movements. But Ms. Burbank, she's correct. The movement of students, we're just rolling those kids up to the next grade level. Now, programming-wise, you have to realize within the last 2 years, I can only speak to the last 2 years that we've done, is the building the programs that we have. That's going to be very enticing for our community, and so you're going to see numbers in our secondary that typically the kids will come back to us. What we're trying to do now is strengthen those programs even in the younger grades, so that when families making these choices, they don't make a choice to leave Nacogdoches, and they stay with it. So the plan is to continue to build the programming so the confidence is there with our folks. I will tell you this, even though we have an influx of charters and private parochial schools, I say bring it on. It just makes us better and allows us to look at the choices that we provide our families and opportunities for our kids. That just makes us better. Instead of the sky is falling and you know what, whenever we have an entity in the school, in the community that says we're going to go after enrollment of kids, then they causes us to reflect on our programming and what do we need to do to better provide the needs for our students.
Well, that's what
Yes, sir.
my surprise was why they were not coming our direction, especially, like I said, I think it's 10th grade, we lost a large number of students, which is a good time to start because the programs that we offer, very beneficial for them.
I was wondering, to kind of address your question about the difference in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th and stuff, and this may not have any effect, but I was wondering if the rollover numbers take into consideration, for instance, freshmen in 2021, 2022 who aren't going to pass all their classes and will still be a freshman the next year, or, does that take
Yeah,
that
you'll
into
have your what's,
consideration? Because that
AKA
could help fluctuate the numbers.
absolutely,
too.
AKA your freshmores.
Yeah.
I mean, you have that gray area of students. We have kids that have to complete their coursework and will know more of an opportunity of what that number may be. That's why when you look at the aggregate for the high school, you kind of have a tendency to look at your freshmen, really would be your 8th graders coming up, and your juniors that are up at the upper grade level. So you will have a population of kids that would be classified basically as freshmores. It's kind of silly, but they don't have quite enough credits. They're still hinging on that cusp. So the numbers that you see there is
Kind of taking that into consideration. Okay, that's what I figured.
Yes,
correct?
that is correct. That is correct.
Thank you. Good question.
So if we move on to the next page, we have, starting with our elementary staffing standards. So every year we tweak our staffing standards as we get new information. So TASB has been very good about publishing best practices, so to speak. In the past, it was hard to find, but now they're getting more and more detailed on what how the rest of the state is staffing and what best practices are. So we look at that every year and we make tweaks. So what I have in what's called the TASB criteria, that's what TASB recommends. If there's an NA there, that means that they have made no recommendations. And then the NISD criteria. And when we differ from TASB, it's because we are going what I call one better. We are actually going beyond like a lower class size or something like that. So there you can see the staffing standards for elementary. The next page is middle school, and then the one following that is for the high school.
I have a question.
Okay.
I think I know what an interventionist is, but Dr. Hill, could you maybe define that?
Is there a particular page that you're looking at? Are you looking
I'm looking at the elementary, the interventionist, yeah.
Sure. Is my mic on? It is. Okay. Sorry about that. Sure. It's one who provides typical small group instruction to a student in a given subject on the specific areas of deficiencies noted by either a formative assessment given in a classroom or a diagnostic assessment.
Good. That's what I was thinking, and I just wanted clarification, especially for our public. The PK, I assume, stands for park?
Pre-kindergarten.
Oh, pre-kindergarten? Under interventionist, okay. But then we also, okay, so we have park too, and our elementary schools have park also.
Some
And
of
so
them
they're like with aides or something, they would fall under aides?
They would, yes.
Okay.
I think only 2 of our campuses currently utilize park.
Only
The
2?
rest of them.
Okay, all right. I just kind of want
Same
out there
concept.
all that we offer, what I'm
Same
saying?
concept, yes, ma'am.
Beyond the classroom teacher, we have, many
Absolutely.
campuses have this park for small group reading, and we also have an interventionist that can pull in small group.
We
Good.
do.
Good.
And then we also, of course, our classroom teachers also have small group instruction as well.
Yes, they do. Okay, good.
So on page 6, the elementary staffing, you see it just is going down in order: principal, assistant principal, librarian, registered nurse, LVNs, counselors, and then we start with our teachers: PE teachers, music teacher, art teacher. Those are the electives. Our interventionists, which are pull-out. Then we go with grade level: PK, kindergarten through 4th, and then there's special ed. So that PK is not part of interventionist, that's a grade level.
So that's to say we've got one teacher for every 19 students, correct, in that ratio?
For
pre-K.
pre-K, yes.
The one
And
that,
one aide.
okay. The one that has the blank down there, on the TASB criteria, it's office clerks, 1 per 225, and ours is blank.
Right, because we are using a different model.
Okay.
So rather than just saying 1 and 225, I found that when I applied that number, we didn't have, we would have to let staff go, So we're just saying, we're requiring, 1 principal secretary, 1 PEMS clerk, and depending on your size, an attendance / receptionist. So the larger schools will get an attendance clerk and a receptionist clerk. The smaller schools, that position will be combined.
So we're a little overstaffed in that area if you use
TASB, that's correct.
guidelines.
That's correct.
One of the areas, President Pinch, and it's a great observation, is, for instance, when you're dealing with PEMS, that's the purse strings.
Right.
And a lot of times TASB would take that and say, that individual can do that job as well as these other jobs. Well, that's not the case, because we have larger elementary schools, and we want to make sure that, how are we keeping up with the PEMS? How are we following up on the enrollment? Where are kids making choices to leave the school? Have they re-enrolled, or are they just sitting at home? So the PEMS, because that is dealing with purse strings, we do a really good job of making sure that those folks aren't having to do multiple roles. Obviously, in some parts of the state, maybe they are doing a better job of that, but I highly doubt it, because you become a master of all things, but you don't really do it effectively. So that's one of the areas. The other thing that I want to make sure that you see is, this model speaks as an entirety, but when you look at individual campuses, the need may be a little bit adjusted. I'll give you an example, BQJ. If we have special ed services that are there that require administration to sit down and have ARDs and TELPAS and the LPAC meetings and all the things that tie it up, then we make an adjustment based on the program on the campus. But we try to stay with this, and then when you see, what you said, we one-up it, there's where we want to make sure that we can provide the support for our campuses based on the programming and the decisions that we've made on putting our students on the various dynamics. Not every campus is built the same, and so we don't want to run it as if we got a mirror campus across and staff it that way. So TASB gives us a good model to say this is your baseline, but we have the liberty to go in there and really refine it to support our teachers and our students on their campuses.
So how does this plan or this recommendation follow what we're trying to do with the different schools and putting the students together and stuff? How is that gonna pan out that way, or do you have to make some adjustments?
No, when you're talking about, for instance, providing bilingual services, an example, providing bilingual services on all campuses, you're providing that services not only to the family, to the kids that making choices, but when we have, for instance, TJR, we'll have to look at TJR because if they're going to have the dual language program there, and they also have bilingual services there, what does it look like? What's the implications on the administration? BQJ, I brought that as an example because that has the facility for what we need with regards to the special education services we provide. We're moving to one middle school, and when you have 1,200 students, what does that look like as far as the support? So we're going to still be very, very diverse and distributing our students where they can meet their services, but we're also going to be very prudent to the resources, that we don't need to replicate a resource if we don't have the population at this particular campus. For instance, Reggae, we don't have the bilingual program. Well, it would be very, we would not be utilizing the resources for a small group of students that could be less than a handful or two handful of students there, than treating and meeting those needs over at Mike Moses, for instance. So in best case scenario, we're going to be very, very prudent on providing services. And there's a threshold, and that when Lisa sees these numbers and the team looks at this, and we've had ongoing dialogue. This is not just, it's ongoing meetings looking at this, at the rolling up of students, so.
Dr.
Question.
Trujillo, we're also doing another thing. We're counting all the kids that come, but we're going to try to find the kids that are lost. So we've improved our truancy program, haven't we?
Absolutely. In my regular conversation with you as a board, you'll see that how we're reaching out to some of our families that are out there and making sure that they can know that they can come back. They feel good, feel confident that we're doing all that we can to meet the needs of the students. Absolutely.
Hey Beth, did I see? Okay, you're good. One thing I'm not seeing on this list, and I realize we're just on the elementary page right now, that are our social workers.
Well, the social workers are district-wide.
Okay, so they're
So-
not really assigned to a campus per se,
Well,
like our
with our
nurses.
ESSER funds, yes.
Okay.
And what I did not put our ESSER fund positions on these staffing charts. When we got the funds, we allocated based on the amount of students, the number of ESSER positions they would have, and that has not changed. They're just not on this staffing chart here.
Of course, you know, speaking, I would love to see them be able to make it to this chart, because I feel like once they make it to this chart, that it's kind of our commitment that we are going to try to find a way past ESSER to keep that staffing up, so.
Yeah, I want to
Hashtag
echo that,
goals.
Pam, because I think,
Yeah.
you know, it's great that we have the ESSER funds right now, but then what happens down the road, the needs are going to still increase, and then if we don't have those positions, how are we going to service those students in
Yeah.
our district? So, yeah, that's.
Yeah. You know, I look and I think we've made such wonderful strides. I mean, I could remember a time when we didn't have a librarian on every campus, and so yay, we're staffing at a librarian on every campus, a nurse on every campus, a music teacher, an art teacher on every campus. I'm super excited, and I see we've got counselor/social worker kind of on there, but like I said, it's kind of hashtag goals that maybe we can work for. On the classroom aides, so, you know, y'all know I've long been an advocate for the pre-K aides. I see that on here, yay. When I see the ratio for classroom aide, if I'm reading that correctly, it's 1 for every 80 students. Does that roughly equal 1 aide for every 3 classes? Would you say that's kind of a...
1 to 2. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, I was wondering, is that a 1 to 2 or is that a 1 to 3? 80 kind of felt like that may be 3 classrooms, but I wasn't sure.
It's a lot closer to 4.
Okay,
88 kids is in a grade level, 4 teachers.
okay.
So, but when you're at 82, it's shy of the 4. So you're closer to the 4 than you are to the 2 when you're looking at 4 teachers. Because the 22 to 1 ratio that we're running per elementary classroom gets you pretty close to the 4. So once again, what you're hearing from TASB, and it's the same thing with the social worker question, is they haven't caught up with that yet.
Right.
Matter of fact, that's why the state redid their counseling job description, was they saw a shortcoming on meeting the social needs of our kids. So what they did is go back and revamped it and said, you know what, we're going to start meeting the social needs of our kids. How did they do that? They pulled back all the administrative responsibility counselors were doing, and so now districts have a counselor. So those are things that this board, as we move forward, we're going to have conversations about, because we do have the social workers at every campus. That was pre what the state has done with the counselors. Now there's a whole different role that a social worker provides, and that's why you don't see it here, but you'll see the counselor's role that we have. It would be amazing to do what we're saying, but we're going to have some serious conversations down the road, because and I say this, we can have anything we want, but we just can't have everything.
Right.
And it sounds kind of silly when I say that. So what is it that we're going to take off the table to make that a priority for our kids? And now, especially on what the state has provided, because the state has now redefined the role of the counselor. But at the same time, when they've done that, all that the counselors did before, who does that fall on now? And so what's the implications on doing that to the administrator or a testing facilitator or whomever is there? So this is multifaceted. They helped us, I think, in their minds, but complicated some things as well. So we're going to have some really good, rich dialogue on prioritization of what that may look like. But
Imagine, and addressing the whole child.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
the needs of the whole
I
child.
definitely want
Yeah,
all of it.
absolutely.
I want all of it.
High five you.
I want all of it. And from my perspective, it's just that I think social worker can take a lot of other responsibilities also, but I would rather see them concentrating, as the counselors, concentrating on the needs of the child instead of having to do the administrative part of things, because from my past experience as being a social worker, taking on that responsibility to take administrative responsibilities takes a lot away from dealing with our kids. So, yeah, I think it's a great conversation we're gonna need to have, but I want the whole thing.
Well, and if I might add, this is all relative to our dialogue. Families need to feel comfortable about bringing their kids back to school.
Right.
Mental health is a real issue with our little ones and our families, and so the more we're able to provide some support, and the families feel that that's a support, then their confidence rebuild that we have. And the teachers can do the job in the classroom while we have these experts that are able to do some of the things that are there. I will tell you, and I mean this with the greatest respect, the counselors do a tremendous job of the work they're doing. But for years, they've been refining the work on the administrative side of it. Now we're doing with the social side of it. Well, social workers, that's all they've done. So we may have a really dynamic counselor, but their wheelhouse has been for decades on the administrative side. So now it could freak somebody out a little bit to just go straight to the emotional side. And there's why it requires us to provide some training and support for our counselors to really go back and do what they chose to do. They chose to become counselors, and now we've got and this is not just a Nacogdoches problem, this is going to be a statewide issue, is how do we inform and educate our counselors on the social side of it. Elementary counselors, when we have them there, that's where their wheelhouse is. Unfortunately, as you get into the secondary side of it, it becomes more administrivia. And it's all relative. That may also have implications with regards to our enrollment, bringing our kids and competence back in. There's definitely a percentage of folks that are out there with that, so.
Well, I'm going to wrap back around to this classroom aid, and out to the side it says if IR, I'm assuming if it's an IR campus, does that
Then they
mean
get
it
an
says
additional
plus-
aid.
Plus
Now-
1, so does that ratio change to 2 to 80? Or-
No, it just means they get an additional aid.
Additional one.
Now, what I would like to point out, though, is on the classroom aids, it's 1 per 80 of all their students. But they tend to not use aids in their upper grades. They only use them in their kindergarten, pre-K,
that's- and that-
kindergarten.
You're reading my mind, that's where I was going.
So really,
Where-
it
for-
comes out
for-
to about 1 per 2 classes, and then if they're an IR campus, then it works out that they have
They
an
have
aid
an
in every.
extra one. All right.
I'm sorry, not campus, per class.
As much as I believe in having that aid in those pre-K classrooms, I feel very strongly about those kindergarten classrooms as well, in those younger ages. So this gives, then you're saying, the campus principal the flexibility. This
Yes,
gives
it does.
them-
They
They can assign them, they don't have to assign them to 5th grade.
No,
can-
they are free to use these aids how they
That
feel
just
is the
gives you a
best need.
budgeting
Yes,
tool. All
yes,
right. Okay, wonderful.
yes.
I have one more thing to say. I think it's very important we look at this, but we're in the vicinity of 88% disadvantaged. And we're comparing our numbers to what's over the whole state. But there's another factor. It's what money we have in our pocket. If I go to buy a hamburger, I'm going to look and see what's in my pocket, and then I pick the hamburger I can afford. And that's something that we have to keep in mind. That's our job,
That's right.
is to afford as much as we can, but somehow we're going to have to say, we can't do that.
Right.
I don't want to say we can't, because we can try, but we have to be realistic. What's in our pocket? Some of these are getting gas and oil, and they're getting all kinds of money. If we didn't have ESSER money, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. So we have to make sure that when ESSER finishes, we just can take what's in our pocket and pay our bills and meet the needs of all children, but especially the disadvantaged.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I'll take that a step further and say it's this board's responsibility to set those priorities.
Yes.
There's limited funding available. So what do we as a board feel like the priorities are? Is having a social worker on every campus a priority? Or is it more of a priority to make sure there's an aide in every classroom? So, that's all part of these dialogues and our responsibility to provide that direction back to them on how to use those resources. So,
Another thing available to the campuses is through their state comp ed funds. They get an allocation, and it's quite large. They can choose to spend that money on supplies, or they can choose to add staff. So we've built into the budget ways for them to be flexible on their campuses and to meet the needs of their students that way.
And I need to add something to that. There's a lot of hoops when you go spending federal money in supplies. There's not many hoops when you go add people. So a lot of that is just in education and having conversations with the leadership that, we can go after the stuff, but just know there's a lot of documentation and hoops that and brick, you're gonna hit walls because you want to do this. So a lot of the conversations that we can have with leadership is sometimes it's the living, breathing, and investing in the living, breathing spirit of a teacher or an aide versus on the stuff that we put in there. Because you can get all the stuff in the world, but then you don't have enough folks to initiate it. So we want to make sure that we also walk that process in visiting with our leadership on making that the best decisions that we can for our folks.
May I make a comment? I totally agree with what Mr. Fitch said. However, there are times that we are not well educated on those. Therefore, we have to follow the responsibility of that person who recommends it, which is our superintendent.
Very true.
Thank you.
I think, you know, and my concern, and I see here a ratio for special education aides as well. You know, my concern has always been and will always be that we get the resources to those teachers to support those teachers in the classroom.
Yes, again, so one thing I didn't lead with is these enrollment numbers, the zoning changes, and these staffing charts have all been presented to each principal individually. We've met with all of them and gone through it. And one thing that we've reiterated with all of them, such as especially with special education, is these are black and white numbers. But when you get into your program, you determine what is needed.
Wonderful. Thank you for adding that.
So again, we have met with each principal and director with these numbers. We've given them their rezoning numbers, what they should expect. That includes bilingual, special education, the regular ed classes. One thing that we did find with a bilingual program is Carpenter and Regay have very few bilingual students. And to have a classroom for one student is not very cost-effective, so we are consolidating some of our bilingual classes to other campuses to make that better.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the potential raises on the next, following the staffing standards. This is just showing you what it would cost to give a 1%, a 2%, or a 3% raise across all employees. And so a 1% raise to the general fund only would be $372,000, whereas a 3% raise to the general fund would be $1,112,542. So take that in mind, and let's move on to the next page.
I don't see social workers on here.
They're professional staff.
Professional staff.
So our revenue projection. So next year, we are anticipating seeing an increase in revenue of $854,523. So if we give a 3% raise, something's got to give. If we give a 2% raise, something's got to give. And when I said that no decisions have been made, no decisions have been made. We haven't decided what kind of raise we're going to give. What we have decided is just the zoning. You approved the zoning, so we know where the students are going to be, and we have let them know what staff they can hire. And it was based on those enrollment numbers.
It'll be based on those two things, as far as the recommendation for a raise, or?
No recommendation has been made for a raise yet.
No, but I'm saying, you're going to be looking at those two factors to determine whether it could be a 1%, 2%, or 3%. Is that
Well,
right?
or whether we can cut somewhere, it just, one thing we can ask the
balance.
principals is, do you really need all these supplies?
Okay. Okay.
So you're not talking about necessarily people, you're talking
Yeah.
about cutting in general across, where are you going to get that?
Yes, no,
Yeah.
there will be no, we are committed to not reducing staff.
Right, okay.
Unless it's through attrition.
Okay.
But just to make sure that the public and our staff knows, right now, with the realigning of the district, the collapses of a couple of campuses, and programming shifting around, right now, no staff member is at risk of losing their position with Nacogdoches ISD. I will be going around and having conversations with grade levels, as well as Dr. Hill, myself, and Mr. Whitaker, about where that assignment is going to be, where are they going to work with. But of course, the window is open for transfers. So teachers are making a decision on their option of where they want to, or which leadership they want to work for. So we've got that window open, but we're also going to communicate with our staff. So I want to make sure folks understand that we are not at a risk of any kind of losing your position with the school district. A couple of things we did to kind of help us with this. If you recall, about 12 months ago, we did not hire some of our administrators. We chose to go with an interim in preparation for this. That's the highest paid position at a campus. That was some tremendous wisdom in our part, so that when we start moving that direction, that's one position we don't have to look at. We can actually go in there and find folks either within the district or somebody that can come in and fulfill the job that needs to be done. So some of the things started 12, 18 months ago as we were planning, and we're anticipating that at this point there's not at all a risk of any staff member not having a position with an ISD.
Ms. Barber? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that unfortunately, combining our two middle schools, we will have teachers who lose their stipend, right? Because we can't keep two of everything.
I can't speak to, there's certain things I can't speak to now with.
Yeah.
Department chairs, stipends, those roles are there because Coach Allman has to look at his coaching staff. The fine arts director needs to look at her fine arts program and who's going and doing what. So the one thing that I will tell you is everybody has a position.
But
I
what it
can't
is,
tell
is
you what
Yeah.
the implications are from moving from not being a department chair, and that has a stipend, to this area where you don't have. Of course, teachers may leave a critical area. And if they leave a critical area, remember a decision this board made was we would pay based on a critical need area. So if you're not in the critical need area, then of course the stipend doesn't follow you. So that one gets a little more granular when we're looking at that. So we've got to go through these phases first and in communication. That gives our staff plenty of time. If they really want to be a department chair and they're not going to be a department chair, then there's decisions to be made. And hopefully they'll see that working for Nacogdoches is a great place to be, and the support that they can have. But those are decisions that folks will have to make.
So tentative staffing assignments have been determined and shared with principals. The principals are sharing those with the staff. They can then, that allows the staff to know where they are assigned, and then now that we've opened up the transfer window, if they don't like where they've been assigned, they can ask for a transfer to another campus.
Ms. Barbrick, on the revenue projection page there, the property tax projection, is that from the appraisal district, or is that just?
No, that is just a
That's
very
just
rough
kind of
estimate
based
from
on-
me.
all
Yes.
right. When
Yes.
will you get that number from the appraisal district? Anytime
They-
soon?
I struggle with getting that from them, but I have not reached out yet because
Okay.
of I know in the past I've struggled, and I know there's a change, so that may change. But they tend to work more on the schedule of the September 1st districts, and so they don't think about us that we're earlier, but I can reach out and get a more solid number there.
I'd be curious, and I say that because the market has been so
Yes,
extremely hot.
that's right.
That I think we're going to see a larger than normal increase there, and that could impact what we're able to do as far as raises.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
So.
And again, that's part of the, we haven't made decisions yet
Yes.
because we don't have all the information yet.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't pay off to be first at the batting cage.
Right?
Okay, because we do have neighbors that are watching, and sometimes they pick after we make our posting. I'm talking directly to the camera, because, and not a bad thing, so that we can hold on to our folks and it doesn't become this game of when the raises are done and when we do those kinds of things. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
Can understand that. That's a bit of a balancing act. If I had 2 cents on there, and I know that it's a balancing game with budget, in this economic environment where we're experiencing the inflation that we are.
Yes.
Would really love to see us do as much as we possibly can for our teachers.
Absolutely.
Yes. So the final thing I would like to discuss is, this is required, property tax discussion, and this was more, I don't know what the word is I'm trying to use, but in the past, our funding was based on prior year, our state funding was based on our prior year property values. So while we knew those numbers because it was in the past, it could cause a problem if you had, so for instance, this year, let's use this example because it might apply. If you had low property values, your state funding would increase because you had low property values. And then moving forward, the next year, suddenly we have high property values, our funding decreases. Or vice versa, if you have high property values, then in the past, then your current year funding would be lower, so there would be a lag, so then suddenly next year, you suffer because now your high property values catch up with you. And I'm sorry, I'm not being real clear with that. The property values drives our funding. The higher your property values, the lower your state funding is. So if you have higher property values, then your state funding goes down. So if there was a fluctuation, the lag hits you later.
Yeah.
That was in the past. Now, our funding is based on current year property values. The implications with that is you don't know what they are, so we're estimating.
Right.
So,
Well, thankfully, the property values across the state have skyrocketed.
Yes.
So that should help us.
right,
Funding-wise.
but with that, your state funding goes down.
Yeah.
It's not an equal amount, but it does affect, one does affect the other.
Right. Yeah, that's that kind of that Robin Hood philosophy though, but if overall, if we're just maintaining with what the rest of the state is doing, I would think that we'd see a
Yes.
not a huge reduction in state
That's right,
funding.
that's right. When you're in the middle ground,
Yeah.
it's not a huge change, no. Now, if we were property rich, then they would allow us to live off of our property taxes only, but
Yeah.
we are not in that situation.
It's a nice way to put it. Allow us to.
Unless you have any other questions, that's all I have to present at this time.
All right. Any other questions for our budget workshop before we move on? Right. Thank you so much for bringing that to us, Ms. Barbrick. I know this will be the first of several coming up as we move into the summer. Right, we're going to move to item 4. We do have a singular action item on today's agenda. It is purchases over $25,000, education advanced. Mr. Martin.
Good afternoon.
Before you get started, let me remind the board, this is an item we did talk about several months ago, and brought in and had a dialogue with regards to a scheduling program that will help streamline some of our staffing and the models that we use for efficiency. So I just want to make sure that you know it may sound familiar as you start listening to it, and this is where we're circling back to bring it back to the board with the previous conversation that we've had. Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, President Fitch, members of the board, Dr. Trujillo. Dr. Trujillo is correct. We began looking at this program, Cardonics, back in October, the fall of this school year. This Cardonics is a patented master scheduling and staffing plan technology tool that allows districts to maximize teaching staff utilization. It integrates with our student management system, uploads every night each of the students' course requests, and also it helps us to determine the parameters or allows us to determine the parameters for staffing ratios, class size limitations, and particular courses, and how long the course will be each day. The trainers, which was also included in this package, will walk the school schedulers through the research-based protocol, replacing sections of the schedule that will ensure that the students get their choices of course selections. The program does the arithmetic for the district support reports and how many sections are required to meet the needs of each student. We are asking the board to consider approving this technology to schedule both the middle school, and this price includes the high school as well. We have talked with both the principal at the high school, who will use this tool to look at what they do as what we call hand entry scheduling versus Cardonics running this schedule as well, to see where we can be more efficient with our scheduling and also get our students the courses that they requested the first time. Cardonics has agreed to waive the $1,250 setup and integration fee, so we thought that was very generous of them as well. So the administration is requesting that the board approve the purchase of Cardonics Master Planning Software for the amount of $29,414. Be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Mr. Martin, that system operates at all different levels or just a specific level of campuses?
It will, secondary campuses, so
Secondary.
6th through 12th grade scheduling.
And
Coach, it will, this Jill Blankenship, I've been ongoing dialogue with her.
Yes.
When you talk about multiple levels, let me hone us into secondary. It's so, it's that scheduling, right now, matter of fact, our high school principal is probably already in the mode of scheduling for this next school year. With that, in the past, you utilize your counselors.
Right.
Guess what? We can't use our counselors anymore, so we've got to look at tools that can help us be much more efficient on scheduling. When Mr. Martin mentions the mathematical side of it, it's the analytics behind it, where this system can go in there and do a schedule. And I want you to think about McMichael, 2 middle schools coming together, 1,200 kids, and having to navigate that. Well, newsflash, we don't have a principal right now. And we're in the process of identifying that individual. At the same time, we have counselors that are continuing to work with students. The analytics with this will help us get pretty close to the first launch. And I'm going to tell you, as a principal running a schedule, I will be lucky to get it at 68 to 70% the first time I run it. This analytics will get me pretty close to 90 or above %, because it's looking at all the choice sheets that the kids have put into the system, and it matches it. So when you say levels, and it is much more direct to, the question is, it's athletics, special education, intervention classes, English 3 versus English 1, algebra, all the different dynamics you have. So the analytics coach will hit each one of those levels and run it, and we can also flag it. For instance, if we have band students and they can only take class during this time, the analytics will match and put those kids in those classes first. Then it will go back and say, these kids, because they have restrictions on their schedule, they will match their schedule first. Versus I have no restrictions, and it's not gonna schedule me. It's gonna schedule the kids with restrictions. I will tell you this, though, and this is the part that we've got to make sure the public understands, is that not every student's going to get everything they want. It's going to be looking at the dynamics of what they have. We have departments like Dr. Young with special education, and if they have specific criteria that kids have to take, this system will automatically load that in there. This was offered to Mr. Autry for the high school. He is choosing to still do it old school. Okay? I loved old school. Old school, you give me a board and I'm sitting there moving it around. But I will tell you, much more efficiency is he will take probably 8 to 10 weeks, if not longer, to master that schedule. This can do it in a couple of hours. And so what we're doing is we're going to go through there and run the system for the middle school, and it's only $1,000 or less.
Correct.
If we just said middle school only, we're only saving about $1,000. So what we did is say, you know what, if high school works in there, and we put the high school in there, now we can present this to our high school principal and let him make a decision to say, you know what, the efficiency works a little bit better. Going back to our previous conversation that led right into this, has budget implications for staffing. It'll see if we're heavily staffed in some areas, and then we can go back and have some really good dialogue as to, do we really need these many units, these CTE, these FTE units, and is that a priority that we have? As a building principal, it would kind of scare me a little bit, because you get to look in my closet and see what I have as far as, but that's not what the game is. We want to make sure that we can work on getting the kids into their schedules as quickly as possible. But so when you say levels, and it's within that context of the grade level,
Yes.
it will match all the courses that they can get and best give you the best schedule you have. Counselors, the only job the counselors are basically doing right now is collecting the choice sheets. And of course, when kids fill out a piece of paper, we got to put it into the system and let them know these are the choices they have. Once that's done, they can step away from it and then start having the schedule that it sets up. This also interfaces with our student management system really well. I want to make sure to put that ahead, because sometimes we go out there and we start looking at interfacing, and then they speak different languages. So Ms. Blankenship works really well with eSchool. We have eSchool, and we use that as our management system. So you're going to see the interface that works really well. What I'm looking for is something efficiently meet the needs of our students and give us the best schedule. Well, we could basically have schedules done before the end of the school year and ready to go. The only reason for urgency to come today is they wanted to start last week or the week before. And so that's why we put it before you now to look at this, so that we can go ahead and get Cardonics working in front of us. There's some amazing tools out there that can help us do the job a lot more efficient.
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, my question is not, is necessity yes or no? My
Yes.
question is information that I need to know.
Yes.
Because I have been a part of a schedule making athletics versus other classes, algebra. I know how difficult it is. To me, that's one of the hardest responsibility for principals.
Yeah, absolutely.
And at the same time, pleasing parents.
Yes, very true.
I have a question for Mr. Martin. Have we had any type of electronic program or any program that we've purchased in the past that's being utilized now? Or we've never had anything electronic like this
For the purpose of scheduling,
for scheduling?
To duct tape, baling wire.
to my knowledge, no. We have a electronic course sign up. We have electronic registration, but with
Okay.
regards to,
Well, okay, let me just tell you what I'm saying is, if we had something and we're not going to have it anymore, then that expense goes to this, help pays for it. But this is an initial expense, and this waived fee of $12.50, is that waived every year, or it's paid on the first year, or are we going to get that next year and the next year and the next year?
it's just a one-time waived fee. That's for initial setup of it. And it will have an annual cost.
Now, to your question, eSchool has a scheduler. Okay? But when you buy a scheduler, and that's the only things it does, then you get much more efficiency in what you're scheduling. So I don't want to mislead our conversation. Is we can schedule using eSchool, but it requires a lot of touching and a lot of hitting and going forward with it, and you can get a good number with it. This is Cardonics, that's the only thing they do. Let me remind us, when we went back and looked at our individual who came in and did our attendance boundaries, that's all he did. Every time I brought something to the board, is the efficiency of getting that one individual, that is what they do. That is the most, because what you wind up doing is you get it done, and then you got to go back and circle and work with it. So eSchool does it, Skyward does it. A lot of your management systems will run the schedulers, but what happens is they are a management system. That's where you keep phone numbers, you keep contact information, you get all of that. But then they also say, oh, by the way, we can also do scheduling. So that kind of helps us to make sure that we have an electronic, when you come visit the school, and you scan in to come in to see the school and its safety. Guess what? They also can start working in the scheduling system, because it's just another direction. So to your question, Dr. Groman, the current system we use has the capability of doing that, but it's an add-on. That's not their primary role. And what we need is, we need the efficiency of the programming that can get it, and matching it. But also look at the schedule types that we have, so.
So basically what we're doing is we're buying man-hours. If we pay for this, there's fewer man-hours, fewer headaches, and it's a win-win. It's a win for administration, and it's a real win for the students, because it's gonna just put it out there, and the most critical students that they have to have this, they will get that. They get priority. And so and this is a specialized system, so this is something that we must have. There's no doubt about it. We must have this. And then I think from a little bit of being intrepid about it, I'm concerned about this. I think we'll learn that we can trust it and it's going to work. It's not going to be 100%, but it's going to be high, and that's good. Probably as high or better than what we've been doing manually. So I think this is a great investment for, like I said, win-win for everybody. And if everybody's winning, the board's winning too, and the superintendent.
It took all the steam out of me. I was very glad that you said what you did before Mr. Martin even spoke, because then it jogged my memory about the conversation in October. Yes. And I have great comfort in knowing that you have been looking at this long. Yeah. Because Mr. Nermon and I, we remember using the thingy, and I remember when it came on, that's how old I am, and we were so delighted. Oh boy, scheduling's going to be done, and it's still a nightmare. Yeah. And counselors all summer trying to schedule and still getting it wrong. And that first 2 weeks of school, sitting down, and I end up with classes of 4 students, and my colleague has 34 students, and we're having to do it all by hand. So I'm so thankful you've answered all the questions. The interface is going to work. These guys know what they're doing. And I guess Mr. Autry is looking for an extra, gem in his crown or something to be wanting to still do this by hand. It will help so much with us joining the middle schools, but that is, relatively speaking, it's complicated, but it's relatively speaking easy compared to the high school, where you've got all these electives and CTE and all, fine arts that have these prerequisite as well. And the fact that he could have this done before the end of the year, or basically way ahead, that is so helpful, because now all of a sudden, for instance, our forensics teacher can find out, oh my goodness, I have plenty of students who've signed up, and now I'm going to have a whole extra class of this. Thank you for getting this. I mean, this is really like a dream come true. Makes me want to go back and teach again.
And I may add, there's a level of satisfaction with this. I'm going to use this as an example, because being a principal, I'm going to use doing my yard. It's satisfying. I've got 7 acres. I can get the mower. I can go up there and mow my lawn, and you feel really good. You look at it, you did it yourself. That's the satisfaction of doing your schedule. And and it's a competition. As a building principal, I can get it to, wow, I got 92%, and I did it myself. No, I did it with a machine. Now, the key is I can go find somebody that can mow the lawn and free me up to do other things that need to be done, and I can still go out there and go, wow, the lawn looks really good. Well, it's kind of the same thing when you look at a system like this. I will tell you, we will revisit this next year. Because if there was a year we needed something, it's this year. We've got a middle school that's combining 2 cultures. Talked about department chairs and stipends and all the things that go into that. So how can we most efficiently do that with a middle school? The byproduct is that all they have to do is get the data for the high school. And then we can give it to the high school and they can look at it. And then down next year, we can make a decision, do we want to continue to invest in this? And is it exactly what we wanted it to do? So this year's critical, especially for the middle school. That's the portion that we want to make sure that we're looking at is, we don't have a principal, we don't have the leadership that's there that can help do a lot of that should be happening right now. And I'm just speaking you from a middle school principal. I was already doing my scheduler by this time of the year. And that's where this gray hair is coming is, we have no scheduler going on right now. And this will help us get the ball moving. So that's what's exciting about this, so.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Right, this is an action item, so I'll open the floor for a motion.
Well, I'd like the board to make a motion that we approve the purchase of the Cardonex Master Planning Software in the amount of $29,414.
A second.
Thank you. We've got a motion by Mrs. Apt, a second by Mrs. Winslow. Is there any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you guys so much. Right, now we're going to move, excuse me, to item 5, which is the agenda review portion of our meeting today. As a reminder, we will not be taking action on any of these items. These are for discussion and review purposes only. So the first item are the board meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or comments or questions in regard to the minutes? All right, hearing none, we will move to item B, business office reports. Mrs. Barbrick.
Good afternoon again. I'd like to begin with the budget amendments, which begin on page 28. Budget Amendment A is, if you remember, we got a ding on our audit for the fund balance in student nutrition being too high. This is a measure we're taking, pulling $281,429 out of fund balance to purchase equipment. Item B, budget funds received for athletic facility use and its associated expenses. Item C, budget increase in MAC and SHAR's revenue and the associated 8% fee that MBS charges. We're applying a portion of the revenue to pay for immigration costs, foundation innovation costs, legal fees, cosmetology nationals contest, instruction, middle school leadership salaries, increase in payroll expense, more expensive employees than budgeted. That is, I believe that is, that's the leadership. Increase in Uil Stipends, and their actual costs came in more than budgeted. So first of all, the revenue increase is $321,790. Instruction, we're adding $110,946. The leadership, school leadership, that is because of the two administrative staff members at one of the middle schools being paid. 36 is UIL stipends. Every year we've increased our participation, and we also increased the amount we paid out individually. 41, increase in 41 is for legal fees. Technology, 53. Oh, that was the one. So we budgeted for a certain amount of potential employees, and we ended up hiring some more expensive employees. And then community services, that is for costs we have incurred in bringing our foundation online. Item D, transfer funds for cheer for uniforms, so they're moving it from function 11 to function 36. E, transfer funds for choir student travel. F, transfer funds for CTE supplies. G, transfer funds for classroom supplies for Margie Chumley. H, budget funds received from donations for soccer and swim. And I, last month, we brought a budget amendment to you for the drill team, and we presented it backwards. So we are correcting that this month. Any questions on budget amendments? All right. Next, I'd like to move to donations, which begin on page 35. Detail on page 36. We received $850 from the, for boy soccer uniforms from the Dragon Athletic Soccer Booster Club, $1,382 for swimsuits from the Nacogdoches Athletic Swim Team Booster Club, and a donation of $1,600 for basketball entry fees from the Nacogdoches Dragon Athletic Basketball Booster Club. And next, I would like to discuss investments. They are on page 38. And we are seeing an increase in our interest rate, so that is good news, and I expect to see that to continue to rise as we are expecting interest rates to continue to rise. One thing, though, that we are seeing with our bond funds as we are completing our major projects, our bond funds are much lower and there's not as much invested, so obviously we won't be getting as much interest there. And then I will entertain any other questions you may have on my other reports.
Any additional questions for Mrs. Barbrick? All right, hearing none, we will move to item C, purchases over $25,000. Item 1 is Solution Tree. Dr. Hill.
Thank you, President Fitch, board members, Superintendent Trujillo. As you recall, back in August of '21, you all graciously approved a Solution Tree contract where we focused on the RTI, or Response to Intervention at Work Academy, and then there were 5 professional learning community embedded coaching days within that same contract. And so those PLC days were specifically for Carpenter Elementary, and so this is for 5 additional days for Carpenter, for that same coach to continue to work with Ms. McInich and her leadership team over the summer, continuing to work on their collaborative teacher meetings and/or PLCs, clearly getting down some systems and structures for beginning of the school year. Those would include your vision, mission, values, goals, as well as the collective commitments.
So this will be done over the summer?
Yes.
To kick off, before the kickoff of the new year?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I had a question about the timing suggested. It seemed kind of early in the summer. We feel like everything will be in place as far as faculty with transfer requests and all of that, so that we actually are working with those who will be teaching there, you feel
Yes,
like?
and this is primarily too for administrators as well. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
it's administrator training as well as coaching.
Oh,
what
so
Ms.
it's a campus-wide, bonding kind of thing?
Correct.
Yeah, and I figured that also, and so we're comfortable with decisions that have to be made, will be made this soon?
We are.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
I know we're meeting with the principals this Thursday to
Okay,
talk about
great.
transfer requests
I
for
didn't
teachers.
wanna come right out and
And
ask
so,
for it.
as you well know, we can't predict what
Right.
teachers may choose to leave us and/or teachers that we are going to hire on. Now, this will just get us through the summer. Hopefully, in May,
Yeah.
you'll see another contract request come through during the school year for a continuation.
So a quick question I see on here that it says days may be delivered virtually, so
It's not going to be, it's going to be face-to-face.
all right.
And also, the number of participants is yet to be determined. Is this a voluntary thing for the teachers? I mean, let me remind the public that teachers are not on a year-round contract, so they would be volunteering their time to do this.
Now, if Ms. McAninich came to me and said, Dea, I really need X number of teachers to come in, do we have money, maybe in federal programs that we could pay them extra duty pay? The answer would more than likely be yes.
Oh,
I know
okay.
we have a couple of days, so the other Solution Tree contract, it's going to take us through June, I believe it's the 6th and the 7th. So there's about, I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. There's probably about 22 teachers that want to continue to, in that training for June 6th and 7th, so we're going to provide them with extra duty pay.
That's
That's a long answer, but.
No,
yes.
that answered my next question. But I'm going to ask it anyway, so that they
Sure.
know that you answered it. And that is, so it has been really beneficial, and to the point where 22 teachers would like to continue this even more. That's very encouraging.
And that was just ballpark, I'm sorry. It's in my notebook, underneath of the exact number. That may be.
No. But just to
A
know
little
that
bit, yes.
there's been a good response.
Because
is-
what has happened is, each principal that's participated in the academy thus far, so it's been McMichael, Carpenter, and BQJ. And so they have brought members of what the campus calls a guiding coalition. And so it varies anywhere from, say, 3 to 9 or 11 people per campus. So those have been during the school day. We've gotten substitutes and things of that nature. But yes, ma'am, those will continue on through the summer who haven't already, committed to vacation plans
Sure.
in June.
And they'll have opportunities during this time to actually address specifically based on what our curriculum is and that sort of thing. In other words, this is not just hypothetical education, how we do, professional learning communities. This is actually getting into, this is what we do, and, okay,
That's what's
good.
great about these is that the consultants will actually come here and work within the confines of our system. And I don't mean confines, but I mean like the parameters,
Right.
if that
The
makes
same
sense.
ones that we've seen.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good.
Yes. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to item D, certify the superintendent to the Region 7 ESC Regional Advisory Committee for 2021-2022. Dr. Trujillo.
Thank you, President Finch and Board. The Regional Advisory Committee is comprised of Region 7 superintendents and charter school CEOs. Region 7 bylaws state that the Regional Advisory Committee members from the local school districts must be certified by the Board of Trustees prior to May 18, 2022. The recommendation is for the board to certify myself, Dr. Gabriel Trujillo, as representative of Nacogdoches ISD, to the Regional Advisory Committee at the Educational Service Center 7 for the 22-23 school year.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this item? Hearing none, we will move to the next item, which is item 6, agenda review discussion. Item A, consideration of NISD 2021-2022 COVID-19 mitigation protocols. Dr. Trujillo.
President Finch and Board, we've had an ongoing dialogue and update to keep our public informed with regards to where we are with any particular rise in our COVID with students and staff. Matter of fact, my communication, just so the public knows, goes on a daily basis with this board. By the end of the day, they know the number, and they know staff, and they know students, any adjustments that are there. We continue to provide the services for our staff and our students. over at Margie Chumley. And for the parents that want to come out and get tested, I would venture to say that's been pretty regular and routine for our families to know that that is a place that they know will be available for them 5 days a week here in the school district. It's a good thing because we had one individual come in today and unfortunately tested positive. However, that's 0.1%. That's less than 1% of our staff. So it's good to know so that that individual can go ahead and seek the medical attention they may require. This has been pretty regular for the last few months where we've had little or no change with our numbers. And so our mitigating steps on the campuses continue to be there that with regards to sanitizer. Matter of fact, we all have it right here in front of us. The shields that are still posed in front of us here, and they'll remain as we go through this process. So there are some things that are going to change the way we've operated. Matter of fact, when you go through a drive-through anymore, it's rare to not have enough room just for the bag of food to go through. There's a shield there that covers most of the drive-through window. Or if you go to a restaurant, a lot of the shields are there. The banks are a little bit different. So the behaviors that going through COVID has adapted us to the new normal. Remember, years ago, we used to be able to embrace, hug, and stand at the window and watch our family get on the plane and watch the plane taxi out and fly away. My kids have never seen that. They know that we drop them off at the curb and we say our goodbyes. So there are things in life that causes us to change, and COVID has allowed us an opportunity to do things a little bit differently. I'm also presenting this because to the board to let them know that it's the will of the board, but I am going to remove this item from our agenda only because I want to make sure that if things do change, that we are cognizant of the fact that it's coming back on the agenda. If we kept it on the agenda, we're running low numbers, no numbers, and all of a sudden something happens that causes the community to pay close attention to it. It's become so normal and so regular that they are not hearing that there is a change. And I'm not anticipating a change. I'm hopeful, cautiously optimistic that this will continue its trend. But just in the case that it is not, and we have to in the future come back and put it as an agenda item, then our public will know, wait a minute, this is back on the agenda. This is, I'm going to lean in and hear. So this is the time for us to kind of back away. We've made our commitment to the community and letting them know that this is on the agenda, keeping everybody communicated. The same thing will happen with the board. I know you look forward to my communication on a daily basis, but there's really no changes with it. However, if there is a change, then we will bring it back onto the conversation, and that way the board can become very well informed on the decisions and the next steps that we have to take, not only in the communication between this board, but also the communication to the community and the things that are out there. Now, Human Resources, Mr. Whitaker and the staff, they will continue to do the things that they are required to do to report to the state or whomever needs to be communicated and monitor that. The other thing is we will continue to do is providing our staff the testing site. We made a commitment with the nurses that we do have, and so we will continue with that process. We may come back to you at a later date, depending on what the implications are, and then what decisions thereafter we might have to do if there's any changes to what we're providing for our staff. So with that being said, President Finch and board, that's my presentation. Yeah, so if you have any questions.
Dr. Trujillo, I would just like to say from, being an elderly person that's worried about everywhere I go and the mask, not you having to use masks, it's a big change for everybody. But I have to commend our district and especially your staff to have really worked diligently to keep these numbers under control and offering services to families and getting tested and things. And I think that says a lot for this district that we're in the position that we're in because you guys have been very diligent about staying on top of that, and we appreciate that. I appreciate it. I'm sure the rest of the board appreciates it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Hearing none, we'll move to the next item on our agenda. The board will now conduct an executive closed session to discuss items posted on our agenda pursuant to the following provisions of the Texas Open Meetings Act and as allowed by Texas Government Code, Sections 551.071, 551.074, and 551.129. No voting will take place in the closed meeting. Any action the board wishes to take as a result of discussion in closed session will take place after the board reconvenes in open session. It is now 1:25 p.m. We will not reconvene into open session before 2 p.m. All right, the board is now reconvening into open session at 3:23 PM. Are there any requests for future agenda items? All right. Hearing none, I will open the floor to a motion.
I move that we adjourn.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, a motion by Mrs. Winslow, seconded by Mrs. Apt. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you guys so much for your time today, and we will see you Thursday evening.